Welcome.
Bonjour.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
You're listening to the Dirty Feet podcast on the No More Radio Network.
Nous sommes vos animateurs,
Et animatrices.
We are your hosts, Allison Burns
JD Papillon.
Et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Listen in.
Écoutez.
We're gonna move you.
This is a special fringe edition of the podcast.
One of several episodes recorded while touring the circuit of the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals during the summer of 2015.
Fringe festivals showcase non-curated theater, dance, and other forms of art.
You can learn more at fringefestivals.com.
This episode of Dirty Feet is brought to you from Toronto, Ontario, where we're going to be speaking with Alias Dance, three members of the company who are presenting a site-specific work this week in Toronto. We're going to start with Lauren Cook, who is one of the founding members of Alias Dance. It's been around for about 10 years now. Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I would like to know, what was the impetus for founding Alias Dance?
In 2007, let's say 2005 is when we started our investigation. It was, there was two contemporary dancers. We were both graduates of Ryerson, and we were working with a street dancer named Megan Cafferty. And we were just interested in finding a common language and finding ways to work together. So we would just start playing in the studio with our different movement styles, finding ways that we were similar, ways that we were different, and then that's basically how it started. We just wanted to try to find like a fusion, I hate that word now, but at that time that was the word, language of like contemporary hip hop, even though I know that doesn't exist, but back in the day, those were all the words we would use. So that's why it started. And then as soon as we started, we were like, this is so fun. We want to show everybody this is really cool. We thought we were really innovative. So we started to work on a show. We actually did the Montreal Fringe in 2007. That was our first show. And the response to what we were doing was really, really strong. People had great reactions. They encouraged us to keep going. And then from there on, it just kept to grow and grow and grow and change and evolve, and became more about collaboration and finding different languages of movement, not necessarily street dance and contemporary dance, integrating like parkour dance and martial arts and like sport-specific training, extreme physicality, and just basically an openness to anything and everything.
So it's not just the language that has changed now, but actually the content of your work as well.
Yes.
And then you have two collaborators here with you today. We have Francesca and Amanda also joining us, who are newer members of the company. And thank you for being here, Francesca.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Can you each let me know how you got on board with the project, maybe starting with Amanda?
I first met Lauren, I think, in 2010 when Alias was doing the Domino Effect in the Fringe Festival. So yeah, I've known Lauren for a while, and I started working with Alias in November 2014. And
then what's your background? What do you bring to the collaboration in terms of style?
I was really classically trained, and when I went to Ryerson, and I graduated in 2010, and so from there I've been just experimenting, being really open to being influenced by different styles, and sort of developing my own. From there, taking little bits and pieces from every experience I have, and as well as things I'm inspired by the other dancers in the company.
Excellent. And how about yourself, Francesca?
Well, I'm also a Ryerson graduate, but before that, I had a strong Lamone-based background, actually. So I was really like contemporary dance baby for a while. But then also at the same time, funny enough, I was taking hip-hop classes from Megan. So like 6 years ago, Megan, one of the founders of Alias, but little did I know that our paths would end up crossing much later in my training. So I met Lauren and a couple of the other girls from Alias when I was entering my third year at Ryerson. They had come to a summer intensive to come see me dance. They were looking for some fresh faces, I think, at the time. And yeah, they were interested in training with me or inviting me to come train with them. And I was definitely interested in what they were exploring in the studio. Then that following summer, I worked with them on a project, and now it's been 3 years I've been with the company. It's been awesome.
So in the 10 years of the company, other than a few fringe festivals here and there, where else do you present work?
We generally self-produce, and a lot of our work is presented within Toronto. We were working in 2-year kind of like spans, working on a production. A lot of our first big production, I guess you could say, was called How to Make a Mixed. No, it wasn't. It was called The First LP. And it was presented at the Lower Ossington Theatre. And it was a mixed program with a collaboration between Heidi Strauss and Apollonia Velasquez. And then Solid State Breakdance from Montreal created a work on us. Valerie Callum created a solo. And then there was some original Alias works as well. And because all of our shows were are collaborative commissions mostly, it takes a really long time to secure the funding and to develop the work. So we were working in 2-year kind of time spans to develop the shows. After that, then we did a show called Shifting Edges, another big program of mixed works with great artists, and that was in 2013. This is the first year actually where we've been able to produce multiple shows in the same year. After our show Shifting Edges, we kind of decided that in order to continue and to grow and to get to develop way faster at a faster rate, we needed to secure our own studio space. So that's what we kind of worked on in between 2013 and now. And so we have our own home, and that's kind of like enabling us to create more work and to be working more. So right now we feel like this is, even though this company is considered, I guess, to be kind of old, 10 years is pretty old, or like middle-aged. I feel like we're just at our takeoff point now. So like this summer is very, very busy for us, and we're, people are interested in commissioning us or in presenting us. And like right now we're doing 3 shows at the same time, and it's just like a dream.
And so you've got your space together now, or
we do, yeah.
Works? Okay.
Yeah, it's a I don't know, a multifunctional space. So we have adult fitness programming and dance classes for drop-in classes for adults. And then we also have children's programming. We have this one studio can transform into a 50-seat studio theater. And we also do, people rent it during the day. It's like really just we approached it in the same way that we approach our work, with openness and just kind of going with the flow and adapting to the community and to what the people need.
Excellent. That's the dream. You mentioned Solid State. I'm wondering for our Montreal listeners if it might be interesting to compare your company to Solid State and kind of compare and contrast.
Sure. I would say, well, definitely Solid State is breakdance. Obviously, Solid State breakdance. So in that, we're very different because we don't focus on one street dance style. We kind of dabble. We're interested in all. I wouldn't say that we're experts in any, but that we're informed by all. The process is very similar. Like when we were working in creation with them, the creative process and the way that we're working is through like a contemporary way of building work. So in that way we're similar, but that outcome is very different. And, they were very influential in the way that we train, I would say. Like before we worked with them, they came and worked with us for, I guess it was like 3 hours before every rehearsal. They would train and condition us. And that really opened our eyes, because that was our first or our second commission, I guess, to the possibility of like, in my opinion, advancing the physicality that we could achieve, but also the physicality of the dance community in Toronto. Because at that time, I feel like that kind of way of working wasn't really here. Like there was more like classical techniques and classical approaches to movement, and this was like really animalistic. We were like running on our hands, and females, doing push-ups and throwing each other around, and so in that it was like really, really inspiring and awesome.
So Francesca, when you mentioned starting to train with Alias Dance, you have your own method now for training your company, or
we're starting to develop our own kind of language in how we train, but it's a combination of different things. So some days we will box, some days we'll do conditioning, like weightlifting and arm balancing and stuff like that. Some days we'll do just contemporary floor technique. Some days we'll go on a parkour run. Some days we'll do hip hop, freestyle. We'll just freestyle for like 3 hours. So it's not necessarily like you come to class and you're taking the Alias technique. You're taking the Alias experience.
I think just in the way that Alias creates and the type of work that we're doing and the type of work that we're performing, it's important to train in this way because the work is so physical, and not having that type of training to support the work would be a very, very different outcome. So I think that it really supports the work that we are creating and gravitating towards as well.
I think to add to that, it also depends on who's in the room. Because if we have someone like Troy Feldman, who's a part of Alias, in the room, he's like a breakdance parkour artist. He's going to want to focus on certain things. So we're going to train that way that day. And then bringing someone in the studio like Nigel Edwards, who is, you can't really put him in any sort of genre or box. He's just a freestyler. He's encouraged us to explore our own individual impulse. So that's become like a huge part of our training. Our training is in being individuals, I think, at the first and foremost. And then the physicality is added on top of that. Because sometimes I know in process, we can freestyle for a really long time. And we're like, wow, this is amazing. But how do we put this in the context of like a super physical story, an actual piece, So that's kind of been the challenge of balancing training and building and creating and investigating.
Speaking of creation, how does that come about? Are there certain choreographers that are company members that work with the creation? Is it a collaborative process? Is it mostly outside choreographers that work with the dancers?
Well, Lauren mentioned before that in the first couple of years of Alias, it was a lot of collaborative commissions for our shows. But now within the past 2 years and year, we're focusing on creating our own work and building our own aesthetic and process. And with the show that we're doing right now, there is a quartet that is actually a collaboration between 4 of the Alias members, myself, Lauren, Nigel, and Amanda. And that's been fun because it's also site specific. So we were in the studio, our own studio, our home, the Cornerstone, creating, and then we had to then transpose everything into the actual schoolhouse space where we're going to be doing the show. And I've also done a video installation for the space, and then Nigel has done the sound design. So everybody's wearing a lot of hats. So it's choreographer, dancer, interpreter, sound design, video design, rehearsal director, atmosphere design. Like there's a lot of different roles that you kind of have to take on, and I think that is also another thing that's particular to Alias. If you're gonna roll with us, you're not just gonna show up to class or rehearsal.
So yeah, let's get talking about this project called Animating Historic Spaces, and it's at the Historic Zion Schoolhouse here in Toronto. And as you mentioned, it is site specific. So where do you start working on something site specific if you start in the studio?
For this project, I guess we went to the site 3 or 4 times before we actually started. So we had a really strong sense of what we were going to do. We used the studio time. It was really minimal studio time. It was basically a residency that we did in the schoolhouse. So we were only in the studio for, I think, for our piece, maybe 1 week. And it was just building movement that we knew. It wasn't building choreography. It was just building phrase work that we could pull from and then adapt in the space. The Hannah Keel's piece, she built a lot of material in the studio. And then when she arrived at the space, she was in the grass and going through this kind of treed area. So she also had to just adapt. But to be honest with that piece, they've really kept the choreography pretty much the same as in the studio. What makes it site specific is that they've just transposed it onto this beautiful landscape. The trio that we've commissioned between Frost, Nick Robinson, and Montreal dancer Victoria McKenzie is it was mostly created again. They did some kind of like initial research in the studio, just figuring out how they were going to work together, figuring out what kind of concepts and themes that they wanted to work with. But then as soon as they got to the schoolhouse again, it changed because they're dancing on the backdrop of the side of the schoolhouse. It has 3 beautiful windows, and they're up in the windows and around the railings and running around the building. So really it was just, again, I use the word openness over and over and over again, but just not holding on to anything that maybe you fell in love with in the studio. And as soon as you get there, just being like, scratch that, let's do this, let's do that. Let's use these goggles. Let's throw ourselves into the grass over here. Let's throw these pine needles in the audience faces. And everyone who's working with us is also approaching the work in that way. The residency for us, though, was super important. I say it's a residency, but really it was just working with an amazing team at the Zion Schoolhouse who provided us with the space. They let us move the desks and play with the artifacts, and then when they realized we shouldn't be using the artifacts, would replace them with ones that we could use. So that's how the work was created.
Yeah, I think it was just really important, like Lauren was saying, to be open to letting the space influence our creative process. So coming into the schoolhouse with phrase work and movement ideas or concepts that we wanted to develop, and then having the space around us allow us to change that and adapt it.
I think the other thing too about this work that we've been creating for this show, like each piece, and the thing about site specific is that your audience's viewpoint can be from wherever. So you have to take that in mind. It's not being viewed from like a proscenium kind of situation for all of the pieces. So that's something to consider for each creator for the show.
And then this material that you're taking into the space, is that something that's been inspired by the history of the space as well?
The schoolhouse, the things that we held on to, because I can't actually tell you the history of the schoolhouse, but what I can tell you is that it was a space that was, again, an open space that welcomed farmers and people from around the community to come, and it became a community space as well as a place of education where you could learn about new technologies and advancements in farming and just things like that. It was a place where people could gather and share information and learn from each other. The schoolhouse invites school groups from around the city to come for field trips there, and they take on a day of school in the year of 1910, where each student wears the name tag of one of the students that attended that day of school in 1910, and they act out a day of school with one of the museum curators acting as the teacher, and they play with the chalkboards, the slates, and they write with their lead pencils, and Yeah, so just using all of that information, we also got all of the archival photographs from the museum. They digitized them for us, so we were really inspired by seeing all of those images. They had images of the first construction of the schoolhouse. They had images of all of these different classes of people. They were really ghostly, so that inspired us inside the schoolhouse. There was images of them participating in gym class, which was like people going up into handstands and jumping over sticks and like, yeah. And we're like, perfect. It's so like, those are the things that inspired us. The visual stimulation of like being in the room with the artifacts and kind of being like, what's this? What is this? What do you use this for? We would ask the curators, and they would go into a little bit of history of those things. We have this beautiful viewfinder that we found. We had no idea what it was. We're like, what's this? This feels like drunk goggles. And they're like, oh no, it's to look at photographs. So then we used that in the space, and it inspired the work. So these are the kind of things that we adapted when we got there.
Well, I'd say one of the big challenges for the space was the desk situation, and how we were going to get people to be seated in the space and how they were going to view it. So inside of the schoolhouse, the audience can see the work from multiple sides, but then also at the back of the space, Lauren and I actually do a duet on top of these original like antique desks that kind of opens the work, and it's been it's been really interesting to work with the actual physical pieces, original pieces, because you feel like as you touch them and as you put your weight onto them, you there's like a physical memory there. And then once we have the lighting going and the music and the projection, it's really ghostly. I mean, I think each piece has its own atmosphere and feel. The first piece by Hannah Keel, the duet, travels quite a bit, so it actually physically pulls the audience closer and closer towards the schoolhouse. And then the second work, which is up against the wall, the trio, is a very light and fun work, super physical, and again introduces the actual physical schoolhouse and maybe a more childlike energy. And then once we go inside, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's like morbid or dark or anything like that, but it's the space is really transformed into, it's very ghostly, and you get a darker atmosphere of the spirits of the people that have been in that schoolhouse for like hundreds of years. Yeah.
Is the intention of the work a tribute to history? Is it about just animating a space that's been empty?
I would say, yeah, it's definitely been a goal for us to like find we didn't want to just go into the space and make a dance. We definitely wanted, for us, like artistically, I am really interested in like the memory of space and the memory of time and the thinking about the number of hands that have touched this desk or been against this wall, and embodying those kind of senses, I guess. I don't know. So we just riffed off of that, and like the fact that they actually have the kids come to the schoolhouse and take on the identity of one of these children from 1910 was really inspiring to us. As much as possible, we wanted to exactly like pay tribute to this schoolhouse and to the people who keep it running and that are working hard every day to like maintain it and make it available to the general public and keeping its history alive. It's important to us that like as art makers that these places stay alive because they're so inspiring artistically. It's I feel like it's really pushed our work. I'm really proud of the pieces that we've made here, and I don't think they would have been able to be what they are without this space. It's really like I can't even explain it. As soon as we got there, ideas were like flooding, and it was more about editing than about coming up with ideas. And we don't have that same experience in a theater or in a studio. So from this, I would say that if I would say that I would love to work in spaces like this more often. I think that our work would be more diverse, and I think that the work of our city would be more diverse, and everyone would find a way to have their own identity. If we could do this every year, then I'd be down. Like, we talk about it all the time. It's really a dream come true. Like, we've always been like, I wish we could do this show. We're always building atmospheric environments anyway in our shows. We are not into like the proscenium theater. We always try to build we hire atmosphere designers for shifting edges. So it's just nice to not have to do that, because we're actually in an atmosphere that's already there and exists. So I would just say that we're like very thankful for the opportunity, and we hope that this inspires people to go and check these spaces out, not even if they're going to like perform in them, but just take it in and, learn about it or visit it or share it or whatever. That's, I think, the whole point of this project and this initiative, is to get people to these spaces so that they can continue.
These ideas that were flooding when you first encountered the space, can you describe like physically what was different about what was inspired by the space, and what would come out of a different creative process for a different project?
Well, I think the most obvious one is the schoolhouse is filled with objects and things to like actually play with. So one thing that we did find were these 2 metal hoops in the space, and we were like, what are these things? And then Amanda picks one of them up, and she starts, playing with it, twirling it in her hand, and I'm like, interesting. Turns out she did rhythmic gymnastics. And then I'll let her finish that story.
Yeah, I did rhythmic gymnastics for only a couple years when I was younger, but it was just amazing to be in the schoolhouse and find those hoops so unexpectedly, and what came back for me out of that. And I feel like there's definitely just an interesting, really inspiring energy about the schoolhouse, because even Nigel, he plays the piano live at the beginning of the show, and that was something that was also very unexpected for us. So I don't think that those elements would have been prominent in any other creative process.
Yeah, I just want to say that Amanda does an amazing solo with the hoops. That's what I wanted her to say. She's not in a unitard, but it's awesome. You should come see it.
And also, like, those hoops, like, we learned that they're a part of gym class. And it was actually this game that they used to play where they would have a stick and they would roll the hoop around on the grass. And it was a competition for who could keep the hoop rolling for so long. But the hoops really became, like, they're another part of the piece, that they're another dancer or character in the piece. They come back, and they're used to, like, it's almost like they're revealing something to the audience, like a looking pool or something like this. And again, like Nigel playing the piano, we didn't even know he played the piano. He's a DJ, and he mixes sounds for us and for other people all the time. But he's like, yeah, I play the piano, but he's never taken any lessons. He's just a freestyle piano player, which we didn't know. So, yeah. He it's the cutest thing. Actually, he has to put stickers on the keys so he knows which one's which. But you would never know when you hear him play. I'm not joking. It's so beautiful. So, like, these things would never have happened. And Franny, the fact that she was just like, in 2 days, she made this incredible film, like a compilation of images that she found and edited together that changed the work so much. And even our lighting designer and technical director, Adrian Wan, he's trying to keep the room really golden so it feels antique-y and yellow, and he's playing with the lights and freestyling the lights while we're dancing. Everybody just came together, and like he's like, I don't want to change the lighting, because he's like, is the lighting bugging you? I don't want to change it. I really want to keep it in this feel, this antique-y feel. So, like, I guess all those things wouldn't have come to life if we were in our white room, because our studio is it's all white, or even if we were in any other studio, because in every other space, I believe that, like, everything that you've seen there and everything that you've done there is attached to you and is a part of your memory. So it's hard to be like shed all of that information and try to find new inspiration. I think that you really have to search for new inspiration, and that when you find it, that you don't have to fight to find ideas. They should just visit you.
So the historic Zion Schoolhouse is located at 1091 Finch Avenue East, and you're performing July 10th to the 12th at 7:30. Are tickets available at the door? How do we go about getting involved?
So the amazing thing about this show is that it's free. So it's the only unfortunate thing, I guess, is that there's a seating capacity of 40 people inside the schoolhouse. But for the first two pieces, it's fully unlimited. So it's just based on a first come, first served basis. The first 40 people that arrive will just get a stamp, and that'll let them into the schoolhouse. But hundreds of people could watch the first two pieces because it's outside and it's really spacious. There's no seating capacity at all. But thankfully, because of the support of the Toronto Arts Council and Museums Toronto, we're able to offer this program at no charge, again, to just encourage people to the site.
Do you want to let us know who else is involved in the work?
So for Hannah Keel's duet, New Creation, we have Catherine Turcotte, or Catalyst, from Montreal. She's amazing hip-hop dancer, but she's really been thrown into this contemporary, really intense contemporary dance duet and doing amazingly well. And then we have Caitlin, who's actually one of our older members of Alias, holding it down with her. So it's a really interesting collaboration between Montreal-based hip-hop dancer and then a Ryerson graduate who's a contemporary-based dancer.
So after animating historic spaces, what comes next for Alias Dance?
Well, on Tuesday, Troy and I actually are flying to the Yukon to present a duet that we created a couple years ago called Euphotic Depth, and we'll be performing that at this place called Cypherfest in the Whitehorse, Yukon. We also have a contract for the Pan Am Games where we've been asked to program a 1 hour long show that will take place at the Harbourfront Centre Theatre. It's been changed so many times, the name of that theatre. So I'm pretty sure it's the old On Wave / the old Des Moines / the old Icebox. So, yeah, who sponsors it? So that's exciting. For that show, we're going to be presenting this collaborative piece called Pipe, which was created by Alan Kasia and Troy Feldman. Also, my duet with Troy will be in that show, and Jasmine Fife will be doing an Afro-Caribbean piece, and also this trio between Frost, Victoria, and Nick Robinson, GWS crew from the Yukon, will also be in this show. So it'll be, again, a really physical show, a more spectacular show. We're trying to make it a bit flashy and make sure that everybody can, in the spirit of the sport of the Pan Am Games, really exciting and physical. After that, maybe we'll take a break and then we'll get back right into creation. Like as soon as we find the next, we've talked about several ideas. I don't want to say what they are yet because they're not confirmed, but there's lots of stuff in the works always.
Excellent. Well, Lauren, Amanda, and Francesca, thank you so much for being on Dirty Feet today, and best of luck with the show. And I look forward to hearing about the future of Alias Dance.
Thanks for having us.
The Dirty Feet podcast is produced and hosted by
Produit et animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
We have Mainline Theatre, Montreal Improv Theatre, and Paul Aflalo to thank.
Merci pour le soutien.
Vous pouvez visiter notre site web, écouter les derniers épisodes, lire notre blog, nous aimer sur Facebook et nous suivre sur Twitter.
You can visit our website, listen to past episodes, read our blog, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
Show us some love and help us spread the word.
Montrez-nous un peu d'amour et aidez-nous à passer le mot.